All right, so we're going to look at some material today from two of these new Republican members of the U.S. House who were elected in November. Today, we're going to be looking at an interview with Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn. And shortly, we're going to look at some tweets from Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. And here's what I really want everyone to get from this. Among, yes, how to identify and defeat really bad arguments. That's important. But there's a bigger story here. These people whose material we're going to look at momentarily, they got elected riding the Trump scam train. They didn't run on policy. They didn't run on being experts in a particular issue or on certain types of subject matter. They ran on merely playing Trumpian characters, riding the wave of support for Trumpism that exists to a greater degree in some parts of the country and in some districts in the United States. And the problem with electing what are essentially characters playing a political acting role is they don't know anything about anything. There's no substance to them whatsoever. Now, in general, in American politics, there's a huge role for personality. You all know this: personality, appearance, public speaking ability, ability to raise money. There's a whole bunch of stuff that in American politics on both sides, it can get people elected who are not the most qualified and doesn't mean they're actually equipped to deal with policy in depth. But this has never been more acutely so than among this latest wave of people who got elected merely for being pro-Trump cultists in areas that have a lot of pro-Trump cultist voters. So let's get right into this. New Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn has been very loudly saying, first of all, that he goes armed to the House of Representatives, but also that there was likely fraud and wrongdoing in states like Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and others because of mail-in voting and other stuff that Trump has also been repeating. You all know the stories. It took 2 months between the election and the inauguration, 2.5 months of them repeating these same bogus, tired stories. And Cawthorn actually voted against accepting certain states' election results in the House of Representatives on January 6th. So Cawthorn goes on CNN and he's interviewed by Pamela Brown, who came very prepared, and is asked about the fact that his arguments for voting not to certify some states apply to the state in which he was elected, North Carolina, as well. But he never claimed that there were problems in his state, even though the guidelines he has a problem with in other states apply just as much to North Carolina. This could not have gone any worse for Madison Cawthorn. He's going to have to stop doing these interviews. But before we get to that part, here's Pamela Brown challenging Madison Cawthorn to cite evidence of election fraud. She says, and I love this, you must have so many specific instances of evidence of fraud, right? And he did not.
What are some specific examples that informed this bold decision, this audacious decision, even after the riots, to decertify the results? You must have seen some concrete evidence.
Well, Pam, the things that I was not objecting to the election on behalf of was things like Dominion voting machines changing ballots, or these U-Haul trucks pulling up filled with ballots for Joe Biden as president. The thing I was objecting for is things like like I said, in the state of Wisconsin, particularly in the town of Madison, there was an appointed official in that town who actually went against the will of the state legislature and created ballot drop boxes, which is basically ballot harvesting that was happening in the parks.
But this was all litigated. You know that the Trump campaign litigated all of this, more than 60 cases, and they lost. Either the cases were dismissed, the Trump campaign withdrew, or they never brought a case because they didn't have the evidence to back it up.
Indeed, I believe specifically, and this is the one that I debated on behalf of on the House floor, in Wisconsin, that was never heard because they dismissed it because of standing. Now, I don't believe that that is concrete enough of a way to say
Well, there were 3 Trump appointed. Okay, so you have
it.
Wisconsin, but you ended up not actually voting against Wisconsin. It was just Arizona and Pennsylvania because you didn't have the Senate votes.
Okay, so he didn't object because of machines or massive ballot dumps coming out of the back of trucks. Okay, but in Wisconsin, some official created drop boxes. But as Pamela Brown points out, that was all litigated. It had no merit. But the most important is he keeps talking about Wisconsin. He didn't end up voting against certification in Wisconsin. He voted against certification in other states. This is so incoherent, we'd need an hour to tease it all apart, and it gets even worse.
3 Trump-appointed judges actually threw out these cases because of merit. It was because of merit. There were 3 Trump-appointed judges out of all of these judges and the more than 60 cases that were tossed out. And you keep talking about Wisconsin. I'm still not hearing any specific examples of fraud. If you would, just tell us, what are the specific examples you saw of fraud? Because when you think of fraud, you think of a vote, you're slipping one past the election official, or a vote was stolen, somehow it didn't count. Did you see that specifically?
No, Pam, and like I said, that's not the reason I
Okay.
contested the election.
So this is already just a disaster for this guy. And then Pamela Brown points out the contradiction between Cawthorn saying he has issues with the changes to election rules in Wisconsin, where his own state where he was elected, North Carolina, made similar changes because of the pandemic. Look at this. If you have an aversion to cringe, walk out of the room right now.
You keep focusing on Wisconsin, but there were several battleground states that you contested to, that you talked about. There were several that President Trump had lost. So it's interesting you're focusing on Wisconsin. But would you apply the same issues you had with these battleground states to your own state of North Carolina? Because North Carolina also changed a lot of the rules, even after voters had started voting. Why didn't you have concerns about your own home state of North Carolina?
Well, you know what, Pam, I'm actually not aware of the laws that were changed inside of North Carolina. I believe we had a very safe and a very secure election here.
Wait, what? North Carolina was fine, safe, secure, even though they did lots of the same things, but North Carolina simply didn't become part of the narrative. And it keeps getting even worse, if you can imagine.
There were several rules.
There's no reason to contest that.
Yeah, there were several rules, one of which is to extend when the mail-in ballots could arrive, I believe, by around 7 days. That was one, and there were a couple of others as well that were changed even after people started voting. So I'm just wondering, if you're so concerned about these rules being changed with the election, why wouldn't you focus on your own home state of North Carolina? I mean, you're telling me that your concern really is about election integrity, not politics, not the results of the election, right?
That is absolutely correct. I didn't do this for any one man or against any one man.
Okay. So North Carolina, though, the same issues you've had and you've expressed about the battleground states, those are the same issues that are in your own state of North Carolina. And North Carolina actually did have mail-in ballot fraud in 2018. So you're not concerned about your home state and whether you were duly elected by your own standards?
Well, I'll tell you, because of the mail-in ballot fraud that happened in the midterms here in 2018, I believe our election integrity standards here in North Carolina are some of the greatest in the country. I think they should apply this metric all over the country, but that's just my opinion.
So he doesn't know anything about it, or at least claims to, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. His election was definitely accurate because he won. So he definitely won fair and square. And then later, in the sort of wrap up to this complete farce of an interview, he admits, yeah, the election wasn't fraudulent. I did what I could do to push back, but it actually was not a fraudulent election. Well, but then Madison, why did you push back?
Can you now say that the election was not stolen, that it wasn't a fraudulent election?
Yes, I think I would say that the election was not fraudulent. The Constitution allowed for us to be able to push back as much as we could, and I did that to the amount of the constitutional limits that I had at my disposal. So now I would say that Joseph R. Biden is our president.
And you have no regrets?
No, I do not have any regrets.
Okay. Listen, Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn, thank you for coming on.
So either he's going to need some serious media training, or he will have to stop doing these interviews. And this is what happens when we elect characters to play lawmakers on TV. It's not about governing. It's the new version of winning a reality TV show. That's all it is. And Pamela Brown so easily dismantles this guy to the point of it being humiliating for him. And you almost start to feel bad for the kid, except that he chose to do this and people voted him in, and now he can wield power and do a lot of damage. So it isn't necessarily a new phenomenon in our political history that incompetent people get elected. That's not new, and we've seen that on both sides. But the way in which the cult of Trump has been weaponized to propel completely clueless people who have no business even being on the House floor. Like, it's not even about what they do. They have no business being on the House floor. Their big concern is bringing guns to the House floor. It is particularly pernicious right now. Now, contrast this. If you want to think about someone who's the opposite of people like Madison Cawthorn and Lauren Boebert, who we'll talk about, think about Jamie Raskin. OK, you don't have to agree with everything Jamie Raskin does. You can say Jamie Raskin's not progressive enough or whatever. Jamie Raskin is a guy who cares about policy and depth and brings a depth of knowledge about the issues. And he can talk about the issue. He is a sort of politician's politician, and he suffered tragic loss recently with the death of one of his children. But he comes to mind as the antithesis to these clueless reality show characters. Let's now talk about Lauren Boebert. If you are anything like me, you probably aren't thrilled with the idea of going into a doctor's office right now. And thankfully, there's a practical and affordable way to take control of your health and get personalized care from the comfort of your home. It's a service called SteadyMD. They're one of our sponsors. You take a quiz, you get matched with a licensed primary care physician who understands your health needs. You have a 1-hour video call with your new doctor. You establish a meaningful relationship with them. And after that, your doctor is available to you anytime by text, phone, or video chat. This is not a random doctor on call. Each doctor at SteadyMD has a limited number of patients, so they actually have time to listen to you. You get the personal attention that you deserve. They can do almost everything an in-person doctor can do: perform medical evaluations, talk to you about health concerns, send prescriptions to your home or local pharmacy, and anything they can't do online, they'll quickly set you up with an in-person provider to do, things like blood tests, as an example. You don't need insurance. It's only $99 a month with no other fees or copays. I took their quiz. They matched me with a doctor who specializes in my particular health needs and situation. The doctor they gave me is a really perfect fit for me and my medical needs. They have a special offer only for my audience. You'll get 50% off your first month, but only until January 31st. So make sure to sign up soon. Click the link right underneath this video.